I shall begin today's conversation with a quintessential quote of J.F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States. It's a familiar quote we all know. And it goes, "American roads are not good because America is rich, but America is rich because American roads are good," unquote. Now, these words underscore the import of our conversation on road infrastructure in Nigeria. Of course, it goes on to suggest that rather than the commonly perceived notion that funding is almost indispensable for developing not just road infrastructure but all human endeavor, on the contrary, good road infrastructure spurs economic growth and financial prosperity. But let me not bore you with the spiral benefit of a developed good road network. But however, a corollary example will be a train ride from, for instance, Idu mega station in the FCT to parts of Kaduna in the north. Of course, the commercial activities that are sprawling along the train routes are extraordinary. But beyond the impact of the economic development, poor or bad roads also have health hazards. And of course, Nigerians are quick to point at the deplorable state of roads when fatal accidents occur, and they do frequently. So how does this resonate with Nigeria? Available statistics indicate that Nigeria's road network stood at 196,200 kilometers of road network, making it one of the largest in West Africa. However, many interest groups have also raised concern about the huge road infrastructure deficit. For instance, it is reported that only 15% or 28,980 kilometers out of the existing road network had been constructed, of course, in Nigeria's 55 years history. But we are also reminded that the United States did not just embark on road construction spree. It was one step at a time. The Buhari administration, fortunately, has created a reputation for itself by committing 30% of its annual budget to infrastructural development. The administration boasts of constructing several hundreds kilometers of interstate federal roads and bridges, of course, including what has been termed now as an unprecedented infrastructural revolution in the Southeast. So, how long will this revolution in road infrastructure last? Today on Late Edition, we examine Nigeria's road to progress. I am Claire Adelabu Abdul Razak. Engineer Obiekwe Anaduaka is the second to hold the position of National Chair, Nigerian Institution of Highways and Transportation Engineers since inception in 2013. Now, he retired, but not tired, as you'll see, as Director of Highway at the Federal Ministry of Works. He is a representative of the Nigerian Society of Engineers and the National Road Safety Advisory Council. He obtained his first and master's degrees at the two prominent Nigerian universities of Nigeria, Nsukka and Lagos. He's a fellow of all local and internationally recognized engineering bodies. Engineer Nuruddin Rafindadi is the acting MD, CEO of Federal Road Maintenance Agency. He is one of the founders of African Projects Consortium, which is a multidisciplinary firm on projects management consulting. He was also president Association of Consulting Engineers in Nigeria between 2012 and 2014. He served on the board of Nigerian Maritime Authority. He's a lead consultant to the presidency on monitoring and evaluation of Nigeria's debt relief gains funded. That's talking about MDGs programs. Of course, we know MDGs now have a successor in the Sustainable Development Goals. Engineer Rafindadi holds a BSc degree in Civil Engineering and a Master's in Water Resources and Environmental Engineering from the Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me for this discussion.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, let's begin with a bit of an evaluation of Nigeria's road infrastructure. Is it as depressing a picture as, I had painted already in my introduction? 15% out of, 190 kilometers of existing roads, constructed in 55 years out of Nigeria's 58 years. Let me start with the director, of course, who served as a director of highways.
Yeah, Claire, thank you for the introduction. From what you said, yes, the picture is deplorable. And let me start by referring to the text you referred to earlier about America, wealth of a nation, and the place of roads. In Nigeria, roads take care of about 90% of the movement of goods, services, and persons. And you can appreciate what that means, because our rail development is still very low. What that means is that there's a lot of pressure on the roads. Over time, the road development I just started sometime in 2026, when the first bituminous road was done between Lagos and Abeokuta. Over time, as far back as 1945, the road network was just about 13,200. So if you compare it with this size you quoted, about 196,000, you see what has been done. But out of this quantity, out of this length, out of this size of road network, about just about 19% is paved. And if a road is not paved, that shows you the level of the quality. And over time, because of certain factors and challenges, the roads had not been maintained. There was a period of what they used to call deferred maintenance or lack of maintenance. And there were, during the military regime, there were years where nil allocation was made in the budget for road maintenance. All these things accumulated until you started hearing Operation Pothole, Operation 1,000 roads.
Yeah.
That was an attempt to salvage some of these heavily damaged quick fix. But it didn't work because there are some other factors that also damage the roads. So immediately you do this, the next morning, the rains, the heavy loads damage the road. So we came back to the situation. This situation gave rise to the establishment of FEMA, for FEMA to deal quickly and as required.
So FEMA is a child of necessity?
FEMA is a child of necessity.
Okay.
However, even FEMA that was brought in to deal with such situations face severe little funding.
Let me pause you. Let me pause you for a while and get the reaction of Engineer Rafindadi, because you are also holding a very key in a position. FEMA is one of the primary intervention institutions in the road construction. What's your reaction? Try and evaluate the state of our roads so far. A depressing picture. Engineer Anaduaka have just quoted.
Thank you, Claire. A depressing picture indeed, as you said, in some respects. In other respects, I find myself always being an optimist to say that there are challenges and opportunities in every depressing situation. There is almost 200,000 kilometers of roads in Nigeria, like you mentioned. But zero it down, out of these 200,000, just about 36,000 kilometers are the federal highways.
Okay.
The rest belong to the states and some local government roads. To make it a bit more impactful, the federal highway network, which is about 36,000 kilometers of the 200,000 or so, carries 80 to 90% of the total load of haulage and passengers of the total federal, the national highway network in the country. So you can see the federal highways network carries even bigger stress of the loading. The road networks take about 90% of the loading of transport in Nigeria. And within the road network, a certain 20% carries 80 to 90% of the entire road network. So federal highways have been characterized by quick deterioration over the years. I'll take you back to the 1990s when the Petroleum Trust Fund was created. Then under the chairmanship of Mr. President, the current Mr. President. I was one of those engineers that were involved in the project management team of the PTF. And I remember at that time, the PTF took a policy of rehabilitation and maintenance of roads rather than trying to build new roads, because the maintenance situation was that bad at that time. And about 12 to 15,000 kilometers of federal highways were actually rehabilitated under the PTF. In 1999, soon after the new government, the PTF, as you know, was disbanded. And within 2 to 3 years, the problem of lack of maintenance came up again. It came to the fore, and we were reaching crisis situation, and that was one of the reasons why FEMA was created, which was actually the Road Maintenance Department in the Ministry of Works. And the FEMA's task was basically to address routine and periodic maintenance.
I'll get you to talk to me about FEMA and what you're doing. I'd just like you to clarify something you've just said. In reacting to Engineer Obiekwe's, of course, statement about the state of our roads, you said you're not totally in agreement that the picture is depressing. Yes. Is it in reference to the 36,000 federal roads or general outlook?
Yes, I said not totally depressing because roads in Nigeria are actually being overutilized. They are serving a function that is a bit larger than what ordinarily you would have expected this level of infrastructure to have been served. You mentioned earlier that there is argument that this roads sector is underdeveloped for the size of the economy of Nigeria, which is true. So we are having a situation where we have a certain level of roads infrastructure development, which strictly is not adequate to handle the economy and the economic growth of Nigeria. But somehow it's coping until this point. A lot of our roads have reached or have surpassed their life period. In ideal situations, when you construct a road, you operate it for 20 to 30 years. They reach the life period, and then you have to do some reconstruction or rehabilitation. In Nigeria, we have a lot of the roads that have exceeded this life period. So maintenance becomes especially difficult. What happens when you have a road that has exceeded 20, 25, 30 years of its life is that you keep maintaining every day, and just as you are maintaining some sections, other damages are appearing in another section. And the public seem to have the view that the repairs are inefficient or ineffective because every day you repair, tomorrow you see damages. More often than not, the repaired sections and new damages are coming out. So the solution in such cases is to reconstruct or totally rehabilitate the roads, but at the same time keep expanding and modernizing our roads infrastructure.
Okay, again, let's quickly, because we'll also deal with the issue of adequacy or not, but let's deal with the issue of the state of our roads. What constitutes good and bad roads? Each time we hear deplorable roads, bad roads, the roads are not in good shape. Engineer Obiekwe.
Yeah, for a road, for road users, you do your conception, your design, your construction. It is expected that the quality of the road at the end of the construction is maintained. Is maintained throughout the lifespan of the road. But there are factors that deteriorate the road. So if you have very good maintenance attitude to the roads are fairly serviceable all through. But once you don't keep to that religion, you start seeing potholes, you start seeing ditches on the road, you start seeing failures, then you hear of bad roads.
Usually, what's the lifespan of a standard road?
A very good road that is well designed, very well designed, well constructed, well supervised, goes to about 20, 25 years. And for all that period, it's expected that the road users enjoy the use of the road. So when you are on the road and you are not enjoying it, there's a lot of potholes, a lot of damages, it's no more a good road.
There's a particular road construction that's going on as we speak. And I think I overheard, one of the contractors, tell a journalist that that particular road in Lagos would last for about 50 years. What kind of design might that be?
I hope you're not referring to concrete road. This is
well, I don't know that.
I think I had that that announcement,
yes.
But it still goes back to what we're saying. If you do a road and you maintain it, it lasts for a long time. But the road, the materials of the road have a lifespan. When it gets to that lifespan, it must give way. But for concrete roads, which we are not mainly used with, are you with me?
Yes, good.
Concrete roads are new technology they are trying to introduce. We have concrete roads, but they are not several. So what you had in that announcement was that that concrete road will last 50 years.
Concrete roads?
Yeah, they are referring to concrete roads. But what we use, what you see everywhere is the blacktops, which we call flexible pavements.
So, Engineer Reverend Daddy, concrete roads. Let's have an understanding of the type of roads, the type of designs, that we have currently. He's just mentioned concrete roads, and I mean, the layman will be wondering, what are concrete roads?
Yes, concrete roads, like the name suggests, is roads that are constructed of concrete. We call them rigid pavements.
Okay.
They are not flexible pavements in the sense that there's a limit to which they can, if there's failure, they'll just crack and then disintegrate. But of course, they are much stronger and they cost much, much more. And the fact of the matter is that ultimately designing and constructing a road is an economic decision. So you have certain resources. This road costs 5 to 10 times more than this other road, but how long will it last? This can last for, like you said, 50 years, which is typical of a lot of the modern concrete roads. The flexible pavements have their other advantages, but also they have a shorter life period, which is 20, 25 years. So it is an economic decision, ultimately, which one you adopt. Basically, it is a good idea to construct concrete roads in heavily trafficked roads with heavy truckloads.
Okay.
Like roads leading to the ports, roads leading to the refineries, depots, roads leading to industries, heavy industries where you have heavy trucks like Obajana and so on. You are likely to have, in the long run, better economic outcomes with concrete roads. But other roads, if you have flexible pavements, they more than adequately serve the situation. Like what engineer said, that 25 years life of the road is going to make much more meaning if you keep regular and periodic maintenance. If you don't.
But what are the factors? We're having a conversation, please, so it's anybody can chip in. What are the principal factors that contribute to the wearing away of the top surface of a paved road?
Yeah, a paved road, immediately you finish your construction. There are environmental factors, dust coming, rain coming, and there are a lot of abuse from human beings, from road users.
The roads.
Yes, they cut the roads, you must have seen them. They cut the roads to lay pipes.
Okay.
And these things cause damages. You can't believe it that some of the trucks, they drill the roads in order to put their jacks, to jack up very, very heavy trucks. And when they finish, they leave it like that. Rain enters it and damages start from there. There are some factors. So once you are not on the road to fill these potholes, and there is no really perfect road, so to say. You watch, once there is some form of deterioration, you make good.
Right.
But if you are not on top of the road, on top of your situation, then those things will start deteriorating. And rain is the greatest enemy of the road, water.
You know, I was going to come to that because I've traveled to some parts of the north, and I discovered that their roads are usually more durable. Is there a climatic factor, more durable than those in the south? Is there a climatic factor, or again, is it as a result of abuse, of
No,
the
but
roads?
climate is also a factor. Climate is also a factor. But what the point we are making is that even when these things affect the roads, you are there to make them good, and the road is still serviceable. So there are climatic factors. I have mentioned rain, I have mentioned abuse, and stress. If there's one we call excessive axle load, if a road is designed for a particular load, you see trucks, all these freighters, they change their axle configuration in order to take more goods, and all these things depress the top sections of the road. And if you go to today, if you go to Abuja-Lokoja Road, you see a long stretch that has been highly underrated.
Yes.
Roads that were finished recently.
Precisely, I was
In
going to come
fact,
to
some
that.
people joke, cement
Yes.
trucks,
Yeah.
goods trucks. Those are the things that damage this road because they are not controlled. They are not controlled. They abuse this road, and then you have those damages. So maybe later we'll talk about what factors or measures to stop all these abuses.
Precisely, Engineer Rafindade. Do you have something to add to what he just said?
Yes. Like I was saying earlier, if you want to enjoy the life period of the roads, you have to be prompt in your periodic and routine maintenance. And every pothole you see on the road started like the size of an orange, either because some abuse or some bit of it rips out or whatever. But the function of road maintenance role is that you inspect the road all the time and find out the small potholes when they are still very small, and you fill them up, you correct it effectively. If you don't do that, after a month it becomes 5 times the size. If you don't do that after a rainy season, it becomes sectional failures, and each time it becomes more and more expensive to maintain. Now the problem we have, like in FEMA, is that we've had a long backlog of maintenance, backlog of rehabilitation, to the extent that nowadays, instead of preventive maintenance and routine maintenance, we found ourselves in disaster prevention mode. And what do I mean by that? You first do your inspection and identify those areas where disaster is about to happen, like a bridge or culvert is about to collapse, or like there's a washout. Washout is a sinkhole, not a pothole. It's a sinkhole where vehicles just get in and disappear.
And there's so many of these washouts. I mean, you go.
So those are the disaster points. Those are what we first identify and correct, put safety marks and so on, just to avert disasters and correct them as soon as possible.
But
before
why
you come
does
back.
FEMA wait for that to happen before moving in?
Because of the backlog. If you take at the
Why do we have backlogs? We ought to be proactive.
Yeah, he mentioned
I will go back to one of the fundamental problems, which is inadequate resources devoted to the roads maintenance, and we can talk about that. It's a different subject. But if you have like I said, if you allow a whole rainy season to pass without routine and periodic maintenance on the road, you are about to have disaster on your hands. But if you are proactive, even during the season, all seasons, then you find that the roads last longer, and for the life period, you enjoy the service of the road much better than if you just leave it to the elements of the weather. So it's, for instance, if you take the budget of FEMA, my opinion, it's like not more than 10–20% of what you need to act, I mean, effectively on all the federal highways. So sometimes you have to select which is a bigger disaster and which is a lesser one. Actually prioritize and try to do as much as you can with direct labor, because it saves cost and time.
Is it because of your backlog that we don't get to see much of FEMA's presence anymore? In those days, we used to say, you know, FEMA at work. Here, I mean, as you travel across the different parts of the country, you see the presence of FEMA. But these days, we don't get to see FEMA.
Well, I dare say you see a lot more of FEMA now, at least until I came. And when I came, we started from the basics of what are the most trouble spots across the country. We have 38 offices in all the country. We have an office in each of the states. We have 2 in Lagos, and we have in FCT as well. And so what we decided was to take the approach of defining the most dangerous places, at least 5 in each state, and then from there drawing up a program of how do we immediately alleviate this, and then we move to the next. And that is how we came out with a 12 weeks program, if you remember, which we started sometime towards the end of December, and took that as a first lap to try to repair those most dangerous spots within the constraints of the funding we had then. Does that solve all the problems of high federal highways? No, I would say no, of course not. But it is just a small drop in the ocean, and we have to keep working all the time. That is what you have to do as a road maintenance agency.
You know, when you talked about, again, constraint of funding, I just smiled, because it always it always a factor in almost all discussions, the issue of funding. And again, I'll just refer you back to that very quote by the American president. It's not funding or money that make you know, good roads. It's good roads that's for, you know, financial prosperity, financial development.
In a way, it's a vicious cycle. Good roads power economic activities. You know, growing economic activities create bigger traffic, and that in turn tells on the roads.
Anyway, we'll look at the models. We'll look at, you know, of course, the financing models in a short while. But let me ask Engineer Obiekwe to do a little bit of a review of government's, you know, policy so far, and how they have enhanced or otherwise, you know, road infrastructure development in Nigeria.
Yeah, government.
Let's look at it within this, you know, the democratic dispensation.
Yeah, if I understand your question properly, I want to use it to talk about reform, but government over time have done their best, but there's still a lot to do in the road sector.
I'll hold you on that.
Yeah.
All right, this is late edition, and we're looking at Nigeria's road to progress. I have 2 gentlemen here with me, of course, who are well experienced in this field. But we'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll continue with our discussion. This is late edition. Welcome back, and our conversation is on Nigeria's road to progress. I have Engineer Nuruddin Rafindadi, acting MD, CEO, Federal Emergency Road Maintenance Agency, FEMA. I also have with me Engineer Obiekwe Anaduaka, who is, of course, the National Chairman, Nigerian Institution of Highways and Transportation Engineers. Gentlemen, once again, thank you. Engineer Obiekwe, you were going to do a bit of a review of government policies and how they've impacted.
Over time, government has tried its best. And in the democratic setting, government has tried more in trying, because roads is a very basic necessity for economic growth and for good governance when the people are happy. But government is still going to do more. And that brings me to the issue of reform. Reform, if you look at what has happened in the power sector, there is a regulator. The NERC is regulating the power sector. The CBN is regulating the banking sector. Even NBC is regulating the media. And for the transport sector, nothing. And the road subsector is under the transport sector, no regulator. And a lot of issues are affecting economic development. So there is urgent need for government to look at the issue of a regulator for the transport sector. Recently, the National Assembly has done SCOMA, which is very good for everybody. They have done some bills, the Nigerian Transport Commission bill, the railway bill, the ports bill, the funding bill, the federal roads bill, all these things, if government key in and get them, that is the best practices that is happening all over the world.
In the interim, what is the role of Nigerian Highway Institution?
The role?
Yes.
The Nigerian Institution of Highways and Transportation is a division of the Nigerian Society of Engineers. And there we look after professional development of our members, the Nigerian engineers in that institution.
And also monitor compliance to safety and standards.
Professional issues, their welfare, and the issue of adoption of standards. You know, that is what we try to do. But before I go out of this that topic,
yes,
it is very important that government should key in and do and institute a National Transport Commission, similar to those ones I enumerated, for orderliness. And under that too, there is a roads fund bill. You know what I'm always talking about, the issue of the vicious circle of good road economy. Under the road fund bill, there are so many strategies for improving funding from local sources. Most of the things that come, just like they do in other economies, most of the things that are related to roads, most of the revenues from there are lumped into the National Revenue Fund instead of setting them aside for purely development of roads and maintenance of roads.
With regards specifically to road infrastructure, what might be the value that a road transport commission would bring to bear?
Well, a regulator will enforce standards. So all these things we are talking about, loading of roads, misuse of roads, litters of abandoned, accidented vehicles, standards of design, and so on, will all be taken care of in a similar way like the other regulators take care. In the telecom sector, we have a regulator. The financial sector, we have a regulator. So transport sector is a vital area of the economy. A regulator will improve the governance of that sector. It will also, a regulator will do a lot to help stabilize the funding situation in the road sector. See, the road sector today, especially the maintenance of it, is totally dependent on budget line items, similar to health and other social services. We all agree we are talking about roads being a catalyst for the economy. In other countries, what they do, the funding of the roads is partly or largely generated by the economic activities that are spurred by the existence of the road. So, for instance, if there are vehicle levies or fuel levies or whatever, then it makes the roads funding to be sustainable and predictable, not just waiting for the vagaries of whether there is budgetary allocations or releases or not. Incidentally, even the current FEMA Act provides for such a levy, which has actually not been implemented to date. And if that had been done, then we would have a situation where the road maintenance does not have to wait for whatever is happening in the budget process. Then you can actually then go ahead and plan long term of on all the rehabilitation and repairs and maintenance you need to do on the roads. And that is what you need, timely repairs. In a way, that is saving funds. If you do timely repairs and maintenance, it's actually saving funds.
So that is the problem. Our maintenance culture, the history, has not been pleasing, and I'm worried and surprised why we're still talking about poor maintenance culture. Engineer Obiekwe, can you help us out here? Is there a reason why we're still talking about poor maintenance culture?
Yeah, that's what we've been trying to identify. The issues of funding, you can never rule it out. The issues of funding, the issues of what to do. Like we're talking about regulations, the issues of capacity, the issues of discipline, this discipline in our environment on road users.
Do you think FEMA has the capacity for, to carry out its responsibilities?
Yes, why not? FEMA has been, if you look around, FEMA has done a lot. FEMA has, lack of FEMA would have been a disaster. So within the limits of all these problems we're enumerating, FEMA has done more. You know, Nigeria is a huge country. Like we say, 30-something thousand kilometers of federal roads. It's not a tea party. If some of these small countries, some of them have 2,000, some of them have 4,000. So 36,000, you need adequate resources, man and material to cope. So in answer to your question, FEMA has done a lot, and FEMA is still there. You know, the more the resources are available, the more FEMA position itself to cope with new challenges.
No, I have something here. Someone was saying to me, clear roads like Benin or Shagamu, Abuja, Abaji, Lokoja, Ilorin, Bida, Mokwa, East-West Road in Port Harcourt, Enugu-Aba, Owerri Road, Maraba, Bali Road, and Hadija Nguru. That these roads, work seems to be perpetually ongoing on these roads. What seems to be the problem? Again, let me begin with Engineer Rafindadi.
Well, these roads you mentioned are all major arterials. They are roads, in my opinion, that you should never take your eyes off. If you take the road all the way from Kano, Kaduna, Abuja, Lokoja, up down to Benin, is a major arterial. Indeed, you can regard it as part of the security architecture of the country. So you should never really take your eyes off these roads, whether it is dry season or rainy season. Whenever there are problems or accidents or damages, it should be repaired immediately. So this is precisely the reason why we say there should be ready funds that are there as and when needed, and not waiting for whatever.
But why do construction work on such roads break down as soon as the contractors just leave site? I mean, literally speaking. The Abuja, Abaji, Lokoja, it's a good example.
Okay, that was the one I referred to.
Yes.
That the road is being abused. Some parts of them are being abused by what I call the excessive axle loading. If you that Abaji area, if you go there, you will shake your head. But the section before Gwagwalada is very, very good, and up to before Abuja interchange. Those ones are very okay. So we talk about these abuses, and there's also some of them needs also to be, eyes should be maintained on them so that they don't deteriorate, especially the ones that have been completed.
You're not talking about the quality of the materials that are used, of course, for the road construction. Are they also culpable?
Yes, those are issues. Those are issues in, earlier you asked of factors that lead to damages to road.
Yeah.
A road that is not well done, not well supervised, especially in the choice of materials, in the supervision, will quickly break down when they finish.
Who supervises the contractors?
The engineers supervises them.
The roads are supervised, of course, by the agencies that are
precisely
that are undertaking the work, either FEMA or the states or the federal government,
or even the highways, because you also have a duty to monitor, to oversee what the contractors are doing.
We do have, that is one of the factors that we have in the country. What we are trying to say is that in the overall, there's a complexity of factors that lead us to where we are, and one of the basic underlying factors is that the roads are handling much more than they actually were. There is a need to expand the road network. There is a need. If you take major urban centers or trading centers or industrial centers, most of them have just one road linking to them, sometimes a single carriageway, and they are in that sense being overloaded. So probably they need to be, the design needs to be upgraded dramatically, like the concrete roads that we talked about. Their closer supervision needs to be placed on the roads, and then loading of the roads needs to be controlled. As of today, I don't think there's any weighbridge anywhere in any part of the federal highway network.
There's no operational weighbridge.
In other best practice situations, you actually have to enforce. That is why one of the relevance of the regulator. You actually have to enforce. A lot of our roads are designed for 30-ton trucks maximum. We know that there are trucks that take 40, 50, and then come on the road and add another 10.
Precisely.
Just for their own gains. And there's no control on any of this. So
let's look at this administration's focus on infrastructure. And of course, like I said earlier on, the 30%, of the annual budget dedicated to capital projects, it's quite unprecedented. How do you assess, government's, response to the need or the road infrastructure deficit?
No, in my opinion, this administration has done very well to address the urgency of the road infrastructure situation. I remember in 2014, 2015, the Ministry of Works was having a budget of less than 20 billion. Today, the Ministry of Works, which is now Power, Works and Housing, but the works component has had consistently above 200, 300 billion every year for the last 2 years. In addition to that, there is...
Just to add, that of course is budget allocation.
That's budget allocation.
Not releases.
The releases have also been consistently good.
Oh.
In addition to that, there is what is now called an infrastructure development fund that has just in the workings of being formed, which is being, I understand, being domiciled with the Sovereign Investment Authority.
Okay.
And three roads in particular, or 4 roads in the transport sector, Lagos, Ibadan, Kano, Kaduna, Abuja, the second Niger Bridge, and the East-West Road are being handled or supplemented with that infrastructure fund. The idea of that is that, notwithstanding whatever inadequacies for budget appropriation or budget releases, these projects will go on once they start, because there is a huge supplementary funding from this infrastructure development
Do we have
fund.
an idea when that is expected to take off?
I understand it is taking off around now, and there is substantial funding already in there just to serve that purpose. So if you take, say, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway, and there's only 20 billion appropriation for this year, you can have the comfort that there's another chunk of funding in that fund that is there to come in to ensure that this project does not stop. So these are some of the concrete steps that need to be taken, and this administration is taking them. In the long run, investment in infrastructure is a sound investment, because the returns will show in subsequent years by way of growth and productivity of the economy. Because functioning road network enables you to have a 24-hour economy.
Precisely. Engineer Obiekwe, is there any paradigm, do you see any paradigm shift in the way this government is responding to road infrastructure?
Well, like you said, the present government has done so well, and they're consistent on the issue of releases. And since we are always worried about budget allocations, this counterpart funding from donor agencies are also very, very welcome. So we don't have any fear for any shift. And with that, some of all these gaps are going to be reduced. And when they're reduced, and the environment has accepted the government's push, then won't be where we are presently. So there's a lot of hope. And,
is this hope? Can we feel them? Can we feel this hope? Can we see, the hope in reality in terms of areas where actual road revolution is going around parts of the country?
Yes, if you travel, you can see a very, very good contractor working massively on Enugu towards Onitsha Road, RCC. And also on the other side, another contractor is also working very well on Enugu-Port Harcourt Road. And definitely, last week, there was an award of a contract which was very, very refreshing to Nigerians. The Kano Abuja reconstruction. And it's been given to a very, very good contractor, Julius Beja. And why I'm so excited about that road contract is that it will be done fast, so the quality will be high. And then there are some new, these issues of rest areas, these issues of way bridges are part of the contract. So we are now trying to go along the route of best practices, what we see in different places.
You know, you mentioned the foreign contractor, and I see some smiles on your face. The Minister of Science and Technology was recently quoted to have said that the reason why we lack capacity to develop our technology, especially with regards to construction, road construction, is because we have given so much leeway to foreign contractors. Is that also a challenge for us?
Yeah, it's a drawback in our capacity to develop our infrastructure. And if you remember specifically, Executive Order number 3 and Executive Order number 5 was enacted specifically to attend that issue. And one of the provisions of that executive order is that contracts that are below a certain amount, I think 1 billion or so, should be reserved exclusively for Nigerian players, Nigerian firms, Nigerian professionals to supervise. And those contracts that go higher and you need foreign contractors or foreign consultants must have to be in partnership with Nigerian entities, and the Nigerian entities should be capable enough to lead that partnership. And so if this continues in that way, then what we are going to have is we are going to have growth in the local capacity, similar to the initiative that has worked remarkably well in the oil and gas for the local content. And the essence of this is that when you give a Nigerian company, a Nigerian entity, the money does not get repatriated anywhere. It gets recycled back into the domestic economy. Other rules regarding the executive order also ensure even the foreign firms that we talk about, even, for instance, Julius Berger, the ownership, it's listed in the Nigerian Stock Exchange. The shareholdership is Nigerian. There is no limit to how much technical personnel you can hire. Just as long as Nigerians are capable and willing to work, they will get placement there. The foreign partners just have a content in the technology and some of the key positions in the management. So it's left to us Nigerians to take opportunity of these executive orders, and I think that we have very good times coming.
Okay, Engineer Obiokwe, you know, you probably would not agree, but it's common perception that, you know, some if not most of the roads that have failed are those that have actually been handled by our local engineers or contractors. That speaks to the capacity of our engineers.
No, that is not correct. You don't just go there, because what we're saying, we've already explained that when a road is finished, there's this need for maintenance management. When a road is finished, there is need to control how the road is used. But all these things are not there. We've talked about this abuse of the roads, so it's not really correct to say that the roads are failing because of Nigerian engineers.
If you go, for instance, if you go, you know, to the at the state or local government levels, you find some roads, you know, are constructed without even shoulders.
Yeah, that's what we're talking about.
And these are roads done by our local contractors.
We're talking about regulation.
Those are standards that are adopted at that local level. But I will tell you, if you take typical examples, Kaduna, Abuja, the whole of that stretch was built by a foreign contractor. It was foreign contractors. It was constructed by Strabag on the Abuja end and Sterling Civil from Kaduna end. Kaduna, Zaria, Kano was constructed by foreign contractors. So the basic issue of roads failing goes back to the conditions that we set. The road, for instance, was built in the early 90s, so we're approaching 30 years. So if there are problems on that road, you shouldn't be surprised that, that it is reaching 30 years. And you shouldn't be surprised that FEMA reconstructs or repairs 1 kilometer, and the next 2 weeks, the next kilometer is damaging, because the basic thing is that the road has structurally failed. You take the example of the runway, of the Abuja runway that was repaired last year. It was built 30 years plus back by a foreign firm, but we were having potholes on the runway. So it had to be rehabilitated. So we just have to go back to the basics. If the Nigerians have the capacity and the tools and the support, they will build as well as any of the foreign firms, because indeed 95–97% of the foreign firms personnel are Nigerians.
Okay, let's run away with this last question, because I'm being told to round off. We've experimented with quite a number of models. Nigerians are not particularly positive about toll gates anymore. In the past, you used to have toll gates as a way of funding and financing the roads. We now have the PPP model. Of course, sometimes you have the BOT model and other. Briefly, what model of financing would you suggest? The present administration is embarking on massive road infrastructure, with a very slim budget.
Well, the government going it alone in building all the roads is a very good thing, but it's not a sustainable model in the long run. What we have said is that roads are not social services. They are economic activities. There are a number of roads in Nigeria that are self-viable. In other words, they can actually sustain themselves. If you take Lagos-Ibadan and you levy a part of the economy generated by the axis of Lagos-Ibadan, Lagos-Ibadan Expressway is more than capable of maintaining itself. And there is a number of roads, perhaps 30–40% of the federal highways, that can, in a similar way, be made to sustain themselves, or at least sustain themselves up to 60%, and then the government puts in a supplementary funding of 40%.
I think India is doing that.
Precisely.
Yes.
That's what exactly India is doing. That amount that is saved by the government is now taken to the rural roads, because the other 170,000 kilometers also need attention, because these are the roads that evacuate our agricultural produce. These are the roads that transfer our rural populace back to the urban areas.
Engineer Rafindade, let me quickly have your last.
Yes, you can't really run away from this issue of toll gate. In a PP model, if part of the strategies to recover money spent, if it is a toll gate, it is welcome. Nigerians are ready to pay if the service is good. For a very, very good road that will go from Abuja to Kano in design time, in the time that has expected your appointment, and they're ready to go pay 100 naira. Nigerians are ready to pay. Nigerians are not resistant to toll gates. It's because some of these roads are bad. They are on the bad roads, and then they collect money from them. You say you're using it for maintenance, and it's not because of corruption. It's not being used there.
So, what do you say?
So they like said, you have to bring road to the table, like a business model. You don't leave government to take care of us all the time, and there are already articulated strategies for improved road funding, from levies or road-related materials into the country. And then there are also donor agencies. There are a lot of huge fund, pension funds. There's a huge fund there. A lot of funding is out there. Once we have the right approaches, we'll get in those funds to augment what government is also doing through the budget. And then we'll be able to meet good roads with money we have, and money we have for economic growth.
All right, let me thank once again my guest, Engineer Obiekwe Anaduaka. He's the National Chairman, Nigerian Institution of Highways and Transportation Engineers. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you,
and Engineer Nuruddin Rafindade is the Acting MD CEO, Federal Roads Maintenance Agency. Thank you very much for joining me for this discussion.
Thank you for having us.
All right, it's been late edition for this week, and we've looked at Nigeria's road to progress, and fortunately there is hope for our road infrastructure, and this administration is on the right track. Bye-bye.